Hey everybody, welcome to another Purple Insider Extra. Matthew Coller along with Sam Ekstrom here. Kicking off a new series. We had What Happened to That Guy. Now we're going to have What Happens with This Guy. And we have to start out at the quarterback position with Kirk Cousins. And Sam, there has been some recent reporting, most notably by Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, that the Vikings' new head coach, Kevin O'Connell, likes Kirk Cousins, and the Vikings are interested in potentially working with his $45 million contract, most likely via an extension to keep Kirk Cousins around. Are you buying that that is what happens to this guy, Kirk Cousins, that he ultimately signs an extension with the Minnesota Vikings?
So I would not rule out the possibility that Kevin O'Connell likes Kirk Cousins, might have had a good experience working with Kirk Cousins. And it may even be true, but I think there's just an equal chance that this is posturing. This is leveraging this. And Adam Schefter had a note on this too during the Pro Bowl. So clearly a message is getting out here. And I suspect that the Vikings are doing what a lot of organizations have done, which is trying to prop up trade value, trying to boost the value or importance of an asset. I don't think teams are going to give a first-round pick for a quarterback that his own team doesn't want and makes it public. That's not smart negotiating. Hey, this is right around the time where the Vikings might be starting to make some calls on Kirk Cousins for a trade. They've got their coach now. The GM's in place. They're, getting closer to free agency. So as we've said on our podcast many times, this all needs to happen in a month. So if there is going to be a trade negotiation, it has to happen pretty soon here. And we've seen this before where GMs and coaches flatly deny that they are trying to trade someone. Josh Rosen is the biggest example where he's our guy. I think they were pretty supportive of Jared Goff in LA, and, he went to Detroit. So I am not putting any real stock in this until I see the official team release come across my email that says we've extended Kirk Cousins. Until then, maybe we'll get a better answer from Kevin O'Connell in person when he does a press conference. If he flat out says Kirk will be our quarterback next year, maybe I'll believe him more. But until then, this is just, I think, leveraging on the Vikings' part.
I don't see any benefit at all to the Vikings telling insiders that they want to trade Kirk Cousins. I mean, like you said, when you're talking about negotiations for a trade, the Vikings are in a position where they do not necessarily have to trade Kirk Cousins. They could fiddle with the $45 million. They could let it stay and work otherwise around the cap and let Kirk Cousins play this out. They have options here where they do not have to. They're not backed into a corner the same way San Francisco is with Jimmy Garoppolo. So they can wait and they can try to get the best offer if they are indeed going to trade Kirk Cousins. The thing that doesn't quite add up here is if you're signing Kirk Cousins to a contract extension, it's going to be no less than 3 years because you have to spread out those cap hits to lower the immediate cap hit. And Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah signed a 4-year contract as a general manager. So he would be locking himself into Kirk Cousins for 3 out of the 4 years, or maybe at least even half of the time that he's here to start his tenure as a general manager. And the same goes for Kevin O'Connell. We assume that they are going to link those two contracts together the same way they did with Mike Zimmer and with Rick Spielman. So you're locking yourself in to being with Cousins as opposed to potentially having the option to pick your own quarterback. And often what we see is even when the wrong quarterback is picked, like it was in Chicago with Mitch Trubisky, Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy still got a second bite at that apple with drafting Justin Fields. Usually it gives you more longevity to have that young quarterback and have a couple of years to build around them as a franchise. And the other thing that doesn't add up either is just it's not necessarily about Kirk Cousins. People love on YouTube and Twitter and all the social media, they love to argue about whether he is a good quarterback or not. I think that's the wrong debate. It's whether he's the right quarterback for this team right now over the next few years. He's in his mid-30s. He's going to be very expensive. And what they had as a team last year is going to be very different than next year. They played a lot of close games with last year's roster, but next year's roster has 5, 6, 7 positions that need to be replaced or upgraded. And with no cap space, that's very hard to do. So I don't think that any of the tea leaves would suggest that this decision is made. They are all set. And the other thing too is, Sam, They haven't even officially named Kevin O'Connell the head coach, much less had time as this man prepares for the Super Bowl to decide exactly what they're going to do.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of decisions that still need to get made. And I think if they went all in on Kirk Cousins, I would have immediate questions about this regime. I mean, that is a huge, huge decision and potential setback to make this early in your tenure. And I would have serious doubts. Now, if they do extend Kirk Cousins, but they accompany it with a first round quarterback, then I think it's a little more forgivable. Yes, you are limiting yourself with, draft assets this year and free agency money. I get that. Maybe that's a form of stealth tanking. Can't be sure about that. But in theory, Kirk Cousins, even in an extension scenario, would be tradable after next season. So if they have his replacement, if they have Cousins at a lower cap number this year, maybe that's a play that is realistic to make. But if they don't draft a replacement and they go all in on this extension on Kirk Cousins, then I think they're handicapping their ability to do much as a tandem, this new GM and this head coach. And I think, have immediate regrets if I were a Vikings fan.
Right. And think about this. When Kirk Cousins, since Kirk Cousins has been a Minnesota Viking, the most amount of money that they've spent on a free agent was Michael Pierce was the biggest contract that they were able to get out. And I think that tells you kind of how it handcuffs a general manager from the very beginning when you have that type of contract. And if it's Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson, maybe that's a little easier to work around, but we've seen it play out over these few years that it just doesn't give you a whole lot of options. And I think that if you're Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, power is in your options to have draft capital, options to have assets to work with through the cap, through free agency, to strike when the iron is hot, when you feel like you're ready to win, because this franchise is really not ready to win right now. And there's another part of that too, which is Kirk Cousins signing this contract extension? Like, we haven't talked at all about Kirk Cousins' side of this, that the best option for Cousins might be to play out this year all the way to the end and then go out on the free agent market where the money is going to be big and someone is going to be desperate for a quarterback, or if he's traded to a new team to sign a contract extension there. It's no guarantee that Cousins, looking at even the landscape of this team right now, a new coach coming in might be exciting to him, but I don't think that there's any lock dead guarantee that you just set a contract extension down in front of Kirk Cousins and he says yes. So there's a possibility that what they're setting up for here is let everybody out there know, oh yeah, we love Kirk Cousins. And then, well, we just couldn't come to an agreement with him, so we decided to move on. I mean, these things tend to happen. And I haven't looked back at what they said in introductory press conferences last year, the Lions, about Matt Stafford, but this situation is basically comparable to that, except for the Vikings have Justin Jefferson and the Lions had nothing. But other than that, there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think Kirk Cousins, having admitted in the past that, hey, I wasn't super comfortable with the organization in the first year. I didn't really want to use my voice. I wanted to lay down roots. And if that's all true, I think there's probably appeal to him to remaining because it's the devil he knows, right? Like he thinks that he has a bit more of a voice in this offense. He thinks he's getting a more supportive head coach coming in with Kevin O'Connell. Certainly he would be guaranteeing tens of millions more dollars. He wouldn't have to uproot his, where his family has gotten established in their home. So there are plenty of benefits to Kirk Cousins remaining and knowing full well that this roster probably won't be great. And it's probably another 7-win season and this and that. But I'm not sure that Kirk Cousins cares all that much. I think that would probably be agreeable to him, in my opinion. And he said as much. He said that I want to be a Viking for my whole career, and that the extension conversations are easy when that is my foundation. So he's put it on record that he wants to be around. We'll see if that bears out.
Yeah, we will indeed. Put a percentage on chance you think that Kirk Cousins gets fired. Gets traded.
Kirk, you're fired. 55%. Better than a coin flip.
I'm going to go 65. I think that it is on the side of being likely, but not at all a sure thing. So let us know what you think in the comments. Also, listen to the Purple Insider podcast, where we go even more in depth on this and many other subjects, including the Senior Bowl, which was very exciting and had some intriguing quarterback prospects as well. So check that out wherever you get your podcasts, and purpleinsider.substack.com for our written work. And we'll catch you next time.